Alright, stop scrolling. This is the one. Go to sleep. The complete Roman Empire saga. 400 years, all in one place. I've spent over 2 years of my life crafting this series, all by myself. Over 20 hours of content, bringing you the ultimate chronicle of Rome. From the golden age of Augustus to the peak under Trajan, through the chaos of the 3rd century crisis. Well-seeded coalition-s reforms, Constantius' new capital, and the final split after Theodosius. This was a massive undertaking. If you appreciate the effort, a like and subscribe means the world. No time. Hit save for later, so you don't lose it. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Roman MP. Let us now journey together, back through the mists of time, to the classical world of the Roman Empire. What is the relationship between the Byzantine Empire and the Roman Empire? Is the Byzantine Empire the legitimate successor of Rome? I believe that when I ask these two questions, friends who are familiar with Roman history are probably already having a brain hemorrhage. The people of the Byzantine Empire had no idea that their country was called Byzantium. If you were to travel back in time to the medieval Byzantine or Eastern Roman Empire and ask the locals, do you think your Byzantium is the legitimate successor of Rome? The locals would surely be bewildered. What Byzantium? What legitimate successor of Rome? Our country is called Rome, and we are Romans. That's right, the called Byzantine Empire was not some successor to the Roman Empire, but Rome itself. Now, some viewers might have a question. Since the Eastern Roman Empire is the undisputed legitimate successor of Rome, why is it given a name today that has little to do with Rome, Byzantium? Why do a bunch of strange countries pop up today to compete for the legitimacy of Rome? The Holy Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Grand Duchy of Moscow. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look together at whether this often mentioned Byzantium is the legitimate successor of Rome. If we want to judge whether Byzantium is the legitimate successor of Rome, the first thing to do is to understand its history. The history of Byzantium is generally considered to have begun in 330 AD, when Constantine the Great moved the capital of the Roman Empire to New Rome, that is, Constantinople. After the Constantinian and Valentinian dynasties, with the death of Theodosius I as a node, the Roman Empire underwent its last, East-West division. He divided the empire between his two sons. The Western Empire was given to his younger son, Honorius, and the Eastern Empire was given to his elder son, Arcadius. The Eastern Empire that Arcadius received is the called Byzantine Empire. Unlike its Western brother, which was soon shattered by the barbarians, the first 100+ years of the Byzantine Empire's history were relatively peaceful. The empire's territory did not change much. After the Theodosia and Leonian dynasties, the Justinian dynasty was established in the early 6th century. Under the classic combination of Justinian and Belisarius, the Eastern Roman Empire launched a special military operation to recover lost territory. It successively eliminated the Vandals and Ostrogoths, and recovered large territories in Illyria, Italy, North Africa, and southern Spain. The Romans' old home, the city of Rome, was also victoriously recovered. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. The Byzantine Empire encountered the century plague of Justinian. The empire's population was directly cut in half, and the road to revival came to an abrupt end. In the early 7th century, Byzantium and its old friend, the Sasanian Persians, staged a final showdown before parting ways. The new emperor, Heraclius, first lost and then won, miraculously defeating the Persians. Unfortunately, while the mantis stalks the cicada, the oriole is behind. A new force from the Arabian Peninsula arose, suddenly and swept through the entire Middle East with the force of a whirlwind. To the east, it eliminated the Sasanian Persians. To the west, it went straight into Iberia and present modern-day France. To the north, it compressed the territory of the Byzantine Empire to the Asia Minor Peninsula. This is the famous Arab conquest. From the 7th to the 9th century, Byzantium was in a difficult situation. It lost territory externally, and internally, the iconoclast movement was launched. The ancestral city of Rome was also permanently lost to the Pope in Western Europe. The history of the late Heraclean dynasty, the Isaurian dynasty, and the Amorian dynasty was generally like this. It was not until the establishment of the Macedonian dynasty that the Byzantine Empire finally ushered in a revival. In the 10th century, the three monarchs Nike Ph or Osii, John I, and Basil I created a golden age in Byzantine history. They eliminated Bulgaria and defeated the Arabs. The empire's territory once approached 1/4 of the Roman Empire's territory. Unfortunately, the history of Byzantium seems to have a curse. As the saying goes, the great tides of Rome rise and fall. They may not necessarily rise, but they will definitely fall. In the 11th century, Byzantium first experienced the Great Schism of the Eastern and Western churches, formally breaking with the Holy See in Western Europe. Then in 1071, it suffered a disastrous defeat at Manzikert. Asia Minor was almost lost, so much so that after Alexios I came to power, he had to ask for help from Western Europe, which directly influenced the launch of the Crusades. Do you still remember the Byzantine law I mentioned? After this round of decline, Byzantium revived again in the hands of the Komnenos dynasty. With the help of the Crusades, it suppressed the Seljuk Turks in the West and enjoyed a rare period of peace in the 12th century. Unfortunately, it was also because of the Crusades. It was such a group of crusaders who also believed in Christianity that destroyed the core of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. The history of the Byzantine Empire then entered a period of garbage time. Although there was the heroic story of the Nicaea, an empire's 60-year restoration. From this moment until the fall of the empire, Byzantium's influence was limited to the Balkans and the two lands of Greece and Asia. After the recovery of Constantinople in 1261, the Palaiologos dynasty went on a one-way road of decline. Until 1453, Constantine and his empire together met their fateful end. After sorting out the history of the Byzantine Empire, we can find that this empire was, on the whole, the legitimate Roman Empire inherited from Constantine and even Theodosius. The empire's first emperor, Arcadius, was Theodosius's own son. The empire's capital was the new Rome established by Constantine, that is, Constantinople. In addition, there is one more point that everyone needs to know. Although I have been calling this country the Byzantine Empire in the previous text, the official name of this country has always been just the Roman Empire. It was not even the Eastern Roman Empire. Until the Ottomans captured Constantinople in 1453, the term Byzantine Empire was far from appearing. It was not until more than 100 years later, in 1557, that the German historian Hieronymus Wolff, when compiling the manuscripts of Byzantine historians of all dynasties, in order to distinguish the classical Greek literature before the Roman era from the Greek literature of the medieval Roman Empire, introduced the term Byzantine Empire. After being promoted by many Western scholars, this term became mainstream. Why did scholars do this? Some people believe that it was to distinguish it from the Holy Roman Empire. Others believe that it was to erase the Roman symbol of the Eastern Roman Empire, thereby elevating the status of their own barbarian ancestors. In any case, we must be clear about one fact: the Roman Empire of Constantinople never called itself the Byzantine Empire from beginning to end. The Romans and their contemporary other nations never considered themselves to be Byzantines. Their official name was always the Senatant people of Rome. This called Byzantine Empire cannot even be said to be the legitimate successor of Rome, but Rome itself. It is such an indisputable fact. Later generations to question the Roman identity of Byzantium. What reasons did they come up with? The first reason is the transformation of cultural identity. After the Roman Empire moved its capital to Constantinople, its mainstream cultural identity gradually differed from the classical Roman culture and turned to the mainstream culture of the region where Constantinople was located, Greek culture. We often say, glory belongs to Greece, greatness belongs to Rome. Greece and Rome are always closely linked, but in the eyes of Western Europeans, the Hellenization of the Roman Empire represented its loss of Roman tradition and abandonment of Roman culture. The Roman Empire of Constantinople was often called the Greek Empire in their mouths. The famous diplomat Alexios I was often called the evil Greek emperor or the cunning Greek monarch in Western European materials. Do you think the Hellenized Roman Empire is still the Roman Empire? Here is my personal opinion. I think this is complete nonsense. The Roman Empire had conquered the Greek region as early as the 2nd century BC. It was also popular among the Roman upper class to hire Greek teachers for their children. Greek culture had long become an important part of the multicultural pattern of the Roman Empire. Just like Gallic culture and Egyptian culture, it can be said that you are in me, and I am in you. The dominance of Greek culture cannot be used as a reason for the Roman Empire to lose its legitimacy. And I also want to ask, how much of the classical Roman traditional culture did the feudal countries of Western Europe inherit? Take the Holy Roman Empire, which is benchmarked against Byzantium. Your official language is Latin. Apart from the upper-class nobles who use it, can the common people really understand it? At least from the cultural level, although the Roman Empire had changed, it was still that Roman Empire. The second reason is the old cliché of the Roman split. Theodosius I divided the Roman Empire between his two sons. The Eastern Empire was only half of Rome, so it cannot be considered the Roman Empire. Is this really the case? Viewers who have watched my previous mainline videos should know that the East-West division of the Roman Empire was not the first time. From the father and son Valerian and Gallienus in the 3rd century crisis to Diocletian's formal institutionalization of the imperial division by the time of Theodosius I's death in 395. The division of the Roman Empire had lasted for more than 100 years. For the Romans at that time, the empire being divided into several parts, with an emperor for each part, was as common as eating and drinking. You say the empire has 2 emperors. Are you kidding me? I've seen an era with 8 emperors. 2 emperors, I think that's too few. In the eyes of the Romans at that time, the Eastern and Western Roman empires were one family. There was no problem of legitimacy at all. It was just that the division in 395 was indeed special, because the western part of the empire was soon destroyed by the barbarians. But this cannot be a reason to deny the Roman legitimacy of the Constantinople regime. To give an inappropriate example, the legitimacy of the Roman Empire of Constantinople is much higher than that of the Eastern Jin established by Sima Rui and the Southern Song established by Xiaojiou, let alone the chaotic Southern Ming. The third reason comes from the deal between the Pope and the Franks. In the 8th century, the Pope and the city of Rome and the Frankish Carolingian dynasty colluded to break away from the control of the Eastern Roman Emperor. On Christmas Day of 800 AD, the Frankish king Charlemagne came to the city of Rome and was crowned Roman Emperor in the presence of the Pope. This also brought a great threat to the Constantinople regime, and at this time the Romans themselves were not up to par. Constantine V I was deposed by his own mother, Irene. Irene simply ascended the throne herself and became the first empress in the history of the Roman Empire. For the patriarchal Middle Ages, a female emperor was a great rebellion. Charlemagne also seized the opportunity to propose marriage to Empress Irene. You are a Roman, and I am a Roman. Then if we are together, won't the Roman Empire be unified? Although this absurd proposal was not realized, the Carolingian Empire from then on obtained the legitimacy of the western region of Rome. Its successor, the Holy Roman Empire, also benchmarked itself as the long-minus extinct Western Roman regime, competing with the Constantinople side. So can we say that the Holy Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire are both successors of the Roman Empire? This is of course impossible. For the Eastern Roman Empire before the Fourth Crusade, what level was the Holy Roman Empire? How dare it compete with me for the legitimacy of Rome? Since Constantine the Great moved the capital to New Rome, this city has always been the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, no matter what kind of enemies appeared around. Whether it was the Bulgars or the Sasanian Persians, even the Arabs at the height of their power could only sigh in vain. Constantinople had never been captured by a foreign enemy. How much land did your Holy Roman Empire control? In the former Roman territory of Gaul, Britain, Hispania, and North Africa. You can't control any of them. You don't even have a stable capital. On what basis do you say you are the legitimate successor of Rome? What's more, after the fall of Constantinople, the Holy Roman Empire also fell into the control of the Habsburg family. With the spread of the modern ideological liberation movement and the trend of nationalism, it gradually went on a road of no return of being neither holy, nor Roman, nor an empire. It also had no energy to compete for the legitimacy of the universal empire of Rome. Since the above reasons are not valid, why is the legitimacy of the Eastern Roman Empire or the Byzantine Empire still questioned by later generations? Because it made the mistake that every empire will make it fell. We often say that truth is only within the range of the canon. This sentence is not at all biased when applied to the Romans. When Justinian raised his army to go west to recover lost territory, the most powerful Frankish kingdom at that time could not have too many rebellious thoughts. When Basil I was happily performing eye surgery on the front line, the reviving Romans could still argue with the various countries of Western Europe with reason and evidence, and slap their faces with powerful evidence. But what about when the fleet of the Fourth Crusade was at the gates of the city? What about when the Orban cannons opened fire? The residents of Constantinople could not say, "My ancestors were the Roman Empire, and they were very powerful, so you can't hit me." This is obviously impossible. Although this empire that lasted until 1453 and almost always insisted on Constantinople from any aspect, was the Roman Empire itself. Their people were Romans. Their culture was a part of the multicultural Roman culture. Their religion was the faith determined by the Roman emperors. Their official name was the Roman Empire. But who cares? People contemptuously called them Greek monarchs or Thracian kings. Later scholars called them the Byzantine Empire. The code name history gave to the Romans was Byzantium. The sad thing is that the name Byzantium itself was not created by the Romans. What is even sadder is that not a single Roman would say a word of defense for his own country. As is well known, the Roman Empire was a vast empire containing multiple ethnic groups, including the heavenly people of the city of Rome, the Gauls, the Egyptians, and a series of other ethnic groups, and the Jews were also one of them. But this little friend, compared to the other classmates in the Roman class, was much more naughty. In common parlance, he was particularly fond of making trouble. He not only created Christianity, which changed the faith of the entire empire, but also often disobeyed the teacher's management and always had physical communication with the class cadres. When Caesar showed his great power in Gaul, the Gauls generally became honest. After Augustus took Egypt, the Egyptians also basically became obedient. But the Jewish uprisings were repeatedly suppressed but never stopped. What was going on? From this issue, let's learn about the history of the Jews in the Roman Empire together. The Jews originated from the Israelites and Hebrews of historical Israel and Judah. It is said that their history can be traced back to before 1500 BC in the Levant region. However, the kingdom of Israel failed to maintain itself and was served in turn by the powerful powers of the two-river civilization, such as the Assyrian Empire and the Babylonian Empire. A part of the Jews left their hometown and began a history of wandering abroad. After the Persian Empire conquered the Levant, the exiled Jews were allowed to return to their hometown and rebuild the temple. Jewish history entered the Second Temple period. The Jews who returned to their homeland successively experienced the rule of the Persian Empire, the Alexandrian Empire, the Ptolemaic Kingdom, and the Seleucid Kingdom. Among them, the Ptolemaic and Seleucid sides fought constantly in the Levant region. The city of Jerusalem changed hands several times. The Jews, in the midst of the storm, finally broke out in the Maccabean revolt in the 2nd century BC and regained their independence under the leadership of the Hasmonean family. The Hasmonean dynasty, with Jerusalem as its core, expanded to the neighboring regions of Samaria, Galilee, etc. Although the sparrow is small, it has all the internal organs. This Jewish dynasty had many political factions. The Pharisees and the Sadducees were representatives of them. The Pharisees were mainly composed of scribes and lawyers, emphasizing the role of the law. The Sadducees, on the other hand, represented the interests of the upper-class nobles and chief priests. They controlled and repaired the ancient Great Temple of the Jews. The rift between the two factions gradually accumulated and became irreconcilable. Finally, in the 1st century BC, a civil war broke out. Neither side could completely defeat the other. Just when the two little friends were fighting in the class to the death, the teacher from Rome, Pompey, his head poked in from the door. In 63 BC, Pompey entered Jerusalem. Judea became a protectorate of Rome, and its autonomy was continuously diluted. After Caesar's assassination, the Parthians took the opportunity to invade the eastern border of Rome. Some Jews saw this as an excellent opportunity to break away from Roman rule and cooperated with the Parthians one after another, trying to drive out the Romans. However, as we who are familiar with history know, such an idea was very naive. The Romans, at the height of their power, quickly repelled the Parthian invasion. The Jewish raiders really tried to steal a chicken, but lost the rice. After mastering the situation in the east, Antony decided to abandon the wavering Hasmonean family. In 37 BC, he supported Herod as the new ruler of the Jews. The Roman Senate granted him the title of King of the Jews. King Herod expanded the territory of the Jewish state and made it the most prosperous of the Roman client states. He was also famous for his large-scale construction projects throughout Judea, including the reconstruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem and the expansion of its base. However, large-scale construction was not friendly to the common people. The saying, "Wonders ruin the country," must have been heard by everyone. King Herod's personal character was also very suspicious, because he was constantly facing the threat of the old ministers of the former Hasmonean family. He executed many people during his reign, including many of his relatives and friends. His rule even prompted the joint opposition of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Pharisees were dissatisfied with King Herod's arbitrary actions in building wonders, ignoring many of their requirements and suggestions for the construction of the temple. The Sadducees, who were closely related to the priestly duties of the temple, opposed him because King Herod, in order to win the support of the Jewish diaspora, replaced their high priests with outsiders from Babylon and Alexandria. Stinky outsiders, coming to our old Jerusalem to beg for food. Although King Herod's relationship with Augustus and the Julio-Claudian dynasty was very good, their relationship was actually a bit delicate. King Herod had to satisfy the wishes of both the Jews and non-Jews in his kingdom, and also had to satisfy Augustus's goal of spreading Roman culture, architecture, and values throughout the empire. I have to dance on 3 eggs to satisfy Augustus's wish. The third temple commissioned by King Herod was named Augustus. This was a temple dedicated to Augustus. It also had many Roman architectural and cultural elements. Such a rebellious act was unbearable in the hearts of the traditional Jews of Old Jerusalem. The dissatisfaction of the Roman Jewish community also deepened day by day. There was another major event during the reign of King Herod, the birth of Jesus, the brother of the Hongtian king. King Herod died in 4 BC. Many viewers may have a question. Wasn't Jesus born in 1 AD? How could he have the opportunity to be in the same timeline as King Herod? In fact, the birth time of Jesus may be slightly earlier than recorded. In any case, the Gospel of Matthew records the two of them in the same frame. After Jesus was born, a group of wise men from the east visited King Herod and asked him, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews?" They also claimed that they had seen a new star rising in the east. Herod was greatly shocked when he heard this. "Is someone going to take my throne?" So he summoned the chief priests and scribes and asked them where the Messiah would be born. He asked them to find this child and bring him to him. He would surely treat this Messiah well. However, after the people found Jesus in Bethlehem, they were warned in a dream not to report to King Herod. King Herod wanted to kill Jesus. Therefore, the people chose to flee the Levant with Jesus. When King Herod heard about this, he was furious and ordered the killing of all boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under. However, the record in this book is generally considered to be a literary device. Its authenticity is probably equivalent to the special effects of the yellow dragon when the ancient Chinese emperors were born. We don't know if King Herod had heard of Jesus, but it is very clear that in 6 AD, the Romans completely sealed the Jewish kingdom in history. The Roman province of Judea was formally established. However, the Jews within the province still implemented internal autonomy. The small duchies, or rather small kingdoms, of Herod's descendants still existed. Their autonomy was supervised by a religious council under the leadership of the provincial governor. However, the relationship between the Romans and the Jews was far from as friendly as it appeared on the surface. It was actually maintaining a very delicate balance. In 30 or 33 AD, due to a small-scale Jewish rebellion, Jesus was crucified by the then governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate. This also indirectly led to the birth of Christianity. In 37 AD, the Roman Emperor Caligula demanded that his own statue be erected in the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. This request conflicted with Jewish monotheism and could be said to have crossed the red line of the Jews. The local Roman official, Publius Petronius, was worried that if he carried out the order, a civil war would break out. So he chose to feign compliance and did his best to lay. Herod's descendant, Agrippa I, finally persuaded Caligula to withdraw the order. But very soon, the rebellious Caligula issued a second order, again demanding that his statue be erected in the Jerusalem temple. "Is this okay? How about this?" I jumped out again. I stood back again. "Hey, how about it? How about it?" I jumped out again. "Hit me, you idiot." However, it was very coincidental that he was assassinated before the statue arrived in Jerusalem. The Caligula statue crisis is considered to be the first open break between the Romans and the Jews. Caligula's successor, Claudius, withdrew the order. To ease the relationship between the two sides, he also briefly restored the autonomy of the Jewish kingdom. Herod Agrippa was appointed king of the Jews, thus in a sense restoring the Herodian dynasty. However, with the death of Agrippa in 44 AD, the Roman province made a comeback. The Jews under Roman rule were always unwilling to give up the traditions of Judaism. Unlike the gradually stable Gaul and Egypt, the Jewish uprisings continued unabated. And with the rise of the famous Roman tyrant, Nero, it was like a naughty student meeting an absurd head teacher. In 66 AD, a large scale Jewish uprising of unprecedented scale was about to begin. Since the establishment of the Roman province of Judea in 6 AD, the Romans and the local Jews had long standing grievances. Although the Romans had shown some respect for the special customs of the Jews, such as deliberately delaying the distribution of wheat to accommodate the Jewish Sabbath regulations, from the completely opposite lifestyles and spiritual beliefs of the two, it can be seen that a final conflict was inevitable. The Jews stubbornly believed that they were different from the other residents of the Roman Empire. This was unbearable for the Romans. The Gauls, Illyrians, and Egyptians, who were much stronger than you before, have all accepted our Roman culture. Why are you the only one who is special? In 66 AD, the Roman governor of Judea, Gessius Florus, added another fire to this long accumulated conflict. He confiscated 17 talents of gold from the great temple in Jerusalem as payment for overdue provincial taxes. In Florus's view, paying taxes was a matter of course. But for the Jews, you dare to touch the money I donated to God. That's outrageous. So the Jews in Jerusalem and various parts of Palestine, under this trigger, broke out in riots one after another. The protesters were brutally suppressed. Only in Caesarea, 20,000 Jews were killed. Such new untold hatreds prompted almost all the Jews in Palestine to rise up in armed rebellion. The First Roman-Jewish War broke out. Not all Jews approved of armed resistance against the Romans. They were divided into two factions, the hawks and the doves. The representative of the doves, Agrippa II, who ruled the northern part of Judea, tried to pacify the situation as a Jew, but to no avail. He and his sister Berenice fled from Jerusalem to Galilee to advance the uprising and force the centrist Jews to join them. The hawks decided to do things to the extreme. They first used violent means to eliminate the dove members among the Jews. Then, the Roman garrison in Jerusalem, after negotiating and laying down their arms, were all killed by the rebel army. Now you have to rebel even if you don't want to. You name it. Here it is. What's the matter? Come on. What's the matter? This grandson. To suppress the rebellion, the governor of Syria, Cestius Gallus, led the 12th legion to Jerusalem. The Roman army occupied Nablus. Cyprus surrendered without a fight. The retreating Jewish rebel army was also defeated. Gallus then occupied Caesarea and Jaffa, and then attacked Jerusalem in victory. But Gallus hit a hard bone this time. Jerusalem could not be taken for a long time. The Jewish rebel army fought back crazily. As winter approached, the long-minded Gallus decided to withdraw his army. But as is well known, attacking is difficult, and retreating is even more difficult. The Roman army was pursued by the Roman rebel army during its retreat. In the Battle of Beth Horon, they were ambushed and defeated by the Jewish rebel army. About 6,000 Roman soldiers were killed in the battle. Gallus also died of illness shortly after returning to Antioch. The victorious Jewish army decided to pursue in victory, sending a large force to besiege the Greek city of Ashkelon. But although the Jewish rebel army plundered the countryside of Ashkelon on a large scale, this battle was a disaster for the Jews. They lost about 8,000 soldiers and failed to take the city. After the Jewish rebel army retreated, many Jewish residents of Ashkelon were also massacred by their local Roman neighbors. At this moment, among the Jewish army, there was a Jewish soldier named Josephus. It was he who wrote the main reference for our video, the Jewish War. But compared to the wrong direction of attack, the commander of the Roman punitive army was even more desperate. His name was Vespasian. Upon learning of the disastrous defeat at the Battle of Beth Horon, the Roman central government was shocked. Emperor Nero was determined to completely annihilate the Jewish rebels. He sent his capable general Vespasian to lead a punitive army with the 5th, 10th, and 15th legions as the main force, pressing towards Jerusalem. Vespasian and the 5th and 10th legions arrived at the front in April of 67 AD. His son Titus led the 15th legion from Alexandria and joined forces with various troops, including the Jewish king Agrippa I, a total of more than 60,000 men, and advanced into Galilee. Many towns that originally belonged to various factions surrendered without a fight. The towns that resisted firmly were also eliminated one by one. The Roman army's steady tactics also reflected Vespasian's personal character study. Josephus, one of the leaders of Jotapata, also joined Vespasian's side after the city was broken. Subsequently, Vespasian established his headquarters in Caesarea and gradually controlled the coastline, confining the Jewish rebel army to the inland. The huge external pressure caused internal turmoil among the Jews. Some Jews who tried to negotiate peace with the Romans were razily attacked by the hardliners. A bloody civil war broke out in Jerusalem. Vespasian, upon learning of the internal strife of the rebel army, decided to slow down his advance to exacerbate the internal division of the enemy. The Roman legions continued to advance steadily, constantly recovering the strongholds occupied by the rebel army. If nothing unexpected happened, this rebellion would soon be suppressed under the leadership of Vespasian. However, if nothing unexpected happened, something unexpected should have happened again. The Roman Emperor Nero was driven out of the capital and was soon forced to commit suicide. The political turmoil in the Roman central government immediately affected the Jewish battlefield. Vespasian asked the imperial center whether he should continue the military operation, but the supreme power of the empire changed hands frequently. Vespasian's request was not answered for a long time. The Jewish war thus strangely stopped for more than a year. Seeing his various colleagues, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, etc., Eucin and Dial take the stage, all putting on the yellow robe, Vespasian really couldn't hold back and joined this power game himself. As for the affairs on the Jewish front, he left them to his son Titus. Titus gradually advanced the battle line to the vicinity of Jerusalem, surrounding this spiritual home of the Jews. In July of 16 AD, Vespasian won the final victory in the Roman Emperor Championship of the Year of the Four Emperors. He then decided to reopen the Jewish war. In 70 AD, the tragic siege of Jerusalem began. Unable to quickly break through the defenses of Jerusalem, the Roman army built a permanent camp outside the city and dug trenches around the city walls. Then they carried out their traditional special ability, building a wall around the city of Jerusalem as high as the city walls. Anyone who tried to escape the city would be captured and, facing Jerusalem, lined up on top of the earth wall and crucified. It is said that one day, more than 500 people were crucified. Cassius Dio pointed out that the number of people besieged in Jerusalem was no less than 600,000. Josephus believed that the number of besieged people was close to 1 million. The Romans first attacked the weakest point, the third wall. It was built shortly before the siege and was therefore not very strong. The Romans broke through in late May. Soon after, they broke through the more important second wall. In the summer of 70 AD, after a 7-month siege, Titus finally led his army through several collapsed sections of the city walls and entered the city. Jerusalem had fallen. The remaining rebel army retreated to the second temple built by King Herod, and was not completely destroyed by the Roman army until the end of July. Josephus recorded the last moments of the second temple in this way. When the legions rushed in, neither persuasion nor threats could stop their impulse. Only passion was directing human action. Many people crowded at the entrance and were trampled by their friends. Many people fell on the ruins of the porticos, which were still hot and smoking, and died as miserably as the defeated. When they approached the sanctuary, they pretended not to hear Caesar's orders, but urged the people in front to throw in more firebrands. The guerrillas could no longer provide help. There was slaughter and flight everywhere. Most of the victims were peaceful citizens who were weakened and armed, and were slaughtered wherever they were caught. Around the altar, the pile of corpses grew higher and higher, and down the steps of the sanctuary flowed a river of blood. The bodies of those who died at the top slid to the bottom. All three walls of Jerusalem, as well as the temple and the fortress, were eventually destroyed. The city was then set on fire. Most of the survivors were enslaved. With the fall of Jerusalem, the remaining rebellion continued in the remote areas of the Levant. In the spring of 71, Titus set out for Rome. Then Rome appointed a new military governor and carried out a security war in the Judean region. In the autumn of 72, the Roman army surrounded the last stronghold of the Jewish rebel army, the fortress of Masada. It was not until 73 AD that the defenders, who had run out of food and ammunition, chose to commit mass suicide. The first Roman-Jewish war finally came to an end. However, this was not the end of the conflict between the Romans and the Jews. The next climax of the conflict would occur in the Golden Age of the Roman Empire, and the protagonists on the Roman side were the two famous emperors, Trajan and Hadrian. In 73 AD, the 7-year-long First Roman-Jewish War, under the resolute suppression of the father and son Vespasian and Titus, came to an end. The Roman suppression of the uprising had a major impact on the population of the Levantine Jews. Various parts of the Levant were hit to varying degrees. The social impact of the war was also far-reaching. The Essenes and the Sadducees, who were mainly composed of the noble members of Jerusalem, both suffered devastating blows. The Pharisees, who emphasized the law, on the other hand, gradually gained a dominant position after the disaster. And after the rebellion was suppressed, the Romans no longer allowed the Jews to retain the religious Holy Land of Judaism, only allowing them to donate to the Roman Temple of Jupiter. The institutions, such as the High Priest of Jerusalem and the Sanhedrin of 70 members, no longer existed. Jerusalem from then on also began to have a permanent and Roman legion stationed. The above Roman policy of tolerance towards the Jews gradually reversed, but such measures were to deal with the threat of the Jews rising in rebellion again, not the so-called anti-Semitism. The Roman rulers did not force the Jews to give up their faith. Vespasian, on the contrary, also established an institute dedicated to the study of Jewish culture, and Titus was not an anti-Semite. In the Levant, after the Greeks proposed to expel the Jews, he refused. The Jews had already lost their homes. Expelling them would cause more people to lose their place of refuge. Titus and many Romans had the same concept: respect the customs and culture of all ethnic groups. Of course, the premise was to obey the rule of the Roman Empire. The autonomous region of northern Judea still existed. The Levant still had a large number of Jews living there. The Roman policy towards the Jews was reflected in the First Roman-Jewish War. The Jews who did not resist could live in peace. The Jews who resisted could only die or become slaves. With the end of the uprising, the Jews and the Romans were at peace for nearly half a century. However, small minuscule riots never stopped. It was not until 115 AD, during Trajan's struggle, that the dissatisfied Jews seem to have found a once minus a lifetime opportunity. Trajan led a mighty army across the border, conquering cities and territories in Mesopotamia, showing great power. He took the Parthian capital Kassitsan all the way and became the first Roman emperor to see the Persian Gulf. But just as the emperor was singing a song of triumph all the way, some radical Jews within the Roman Empire chose to take the opportunity to backstab. You foreign brute, listen up. When the prime minister was alive, I was still afraid of him by 3 points. Now that he is dead, who in the world dares to oppose me? Don't say shout 3 times. Even if you shout 30,000 times, what's the difficulty? Dares to kill me. Who dares to kill me? I dare to kill you. Hey! The uprising first broke out in Cyrenaica and quickly spread to Egypt, Cyprus, and the newly conquered Mesopotamian cities of the Roman army. The Jews in the cities all rioted, attacking the local Roman garrisons. The rebel army destroyed many temples, including those of Jupiter, Apollo, Artemis, and Isis, as well as civil buildings that were symbols of Rome, including basilicas and public baths. Destroying the great baths, how could Trajan, as a bath-shoner, tolerate this? The Roman general Aulus Quietus was ordered to suppress the Jewish riot. This war was eventually named the Kit-Os War after him. In 117 AD, the Kit-Os War was basically suppressed. On the Parthian side, Trajan could not completely defeat the Parthian forces on the front line, and he was also ill. He was forced to choose to withdraw his army and return west, and died on the way. His successor, Hadrian, chose to give up the 2 river and Armenian regions conquered by Trajan, and shrink the defense line to maintain stability. For the Romans, they had conquered such a large piece of territory, but now they quickly lost it. Whose fault was it? It couldn't be the fault of the wizened martial Emperor Trajan, right? The resourceful Emperor Hadrian would not be at fault either. Then who could be the reason? Who was it that backstabbed when the Romans were united against the outside world and crushing the Parthians? Yang Chen, you are incompetent. You have lost the country and brought shame upon it. The answer is obvious. So in the more than 10 years of the Kit-Os War, the relationship between the Romans and the Jews became very tense. To ease this tense relationship, Hadrian personally visited Jerusalem in 130 AD to express his concern. However, the conflict still broke out soon after. Some records say that when Hadrian visited the ruins of the Second Temple, he initially sympathized with the Jews and promised to rebuild the temple. As a result, Hadrian planned to build a temple dedicated to Jupiter. The Jews felt betrayed and thus strengthened their determination to resist. However, whether the above records can be believed is up to everyone's personal opinion. The only thing that can be confirmed is that in 132 AD, a long-planned major uprising broke out again in the Levantine region. This rebellion was carefully planned by the Jewish leader Bar Kokhba. At the beginning of the uprising, the 10th Legion stationed in Jerusalem suffered heavy casualties under a sudden surprise attack. Bar Kokhba's tactics were very flexible. He did not blindly seek a strong attack, but combined guerrilla warfare, doing his best to increase the casualties of the Roman army. At the same time, he combined tunnel warfare, building a huge tunnel system in various villages and towns to deal with the encirclement and suppression of the Roman army. The Jewish rebel army hoped to resist the Roman offensive through narrow passages and even underground ambushes. The cave systems were usually interconnected and served not only as hiding places for the rebels, but also as shelters for their families and supplies. Faced with the critical situation on the front line, Hadrian dispatched his beloved general Julius Severus to lead the Danube legions to suppress it. The scale of this war was larger than the one 50 years ago. It is said that 10 Roman legions participated in this war. Faced with the pressure of a large army, Bar Kokhba used the tunnel system and guerrilla tactics to resist step by step, refusing to surrender. But gradually, 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Finally, in 135 AD, he retreated to the last stronghold, the fortress of Betar, similar to the fortress of Masada half a century ago. The resistance of the fortress of Betar was also very fierce and cruel, and had the same ending. The fortress was breached and destroyed on the traditional Jewish fast day in 135 AD. This day happened to be the day of mourning for the destruction of the first and second Jewish temples. After the city was broken, all the Jewish resistance forces in the city were slaughtered. The Romans continued to carry out cleanup operations around the rebel towns until 136 AD, when this round of the Great Jewish Uprising was completely suppressed. The Bar Kokhba revolt brought disastrous consequences to the Jews of the Levant. The scale of their suffering even surpassed that of the First Roman-Jewish War. The entire central Levant became desolate. However, the losses of the Romans in the war were also equally heavy. Many Romans lost their lives in this war. The letters sent by the Roman emperor to the Senate usually began with the following sentence: "If you and your children are in good health, that is good. I and the army are very healthy." However, Hadrian did not start with this sentence, which should indicate that the Roman army participating in the suppression was not very healthy, and the large number of Roman veteran diplomas preserved in the late 152nd and 162nd AD show that the Roman Empire carried out unprecedented conscription during the war to supplement the major losses of troops and personnel. Many Roman legions may have had to be disbanded as a whole due to the huge losses of the Jewish war. Causing such huge losses, the Roman emperor could no longer maintain tolerance and restraint towards the Jews. The suppression of Jewish religious and political authority was more cruel than before. The province of Judea was also renamed Syria Palestine. Hadrian issued a series of religious decrees aimed at eradicating Jewish nationalism in Judea. He banned the Torah and the Hebrew calendar, and executed Jewish scholars. He also took tough measures that previous Roman emperors had never taken. That is, to expel all the Jews from Jerusalem. From then on, Jewish believers were forbidden to live in Jerusalem. At the same time, he also banned the act of circumcision. However, even Hadrian did not ban the Jewish faith. The Jewish communities in other parts of the Roman Empire were not significantly affected. The consistent policy of the Romans was that as long as they did not resist Rome, they would recognize freedom of belief. However, with this uprising as a node, the era of the Jewish diaspora began. They would wander around the world in the following 1,000 years. If you were to travel back to the mid-6th century Eastern Roman Empire, you would see a terrifying scene. The empire's capital, Constantinople, had become a hell of death. The once prosperous city was in a tragic state during the epidemic. The records of the gates of Constantinople show that the officials who transported the bodies out of the city for burial, after counting to 230,000, could no longer continue to count because the number of bodies was too large. In some cities and villages in Palestine, all the people died, and no one survived. All the residents were mercilessly squeezed and crushed like beautiful grapes. From Syria to Thrace, no one harvested grain during the harvest season. There were no people on the streets of the cities. The plague wiped out a large number of local residents. Some cities were so severely affected that almost no one survived. At first, people were buried according to Christian tradition. When the existing tombs were all filled with dead bodies, they dug pits one by one in various places in the suburbs of the city to place the bodies, doing their best to give one pit to one deceased. But later, those who dug the trenches to bury the dead could not cope with the burial of a large number of bodies. They climbed up the towers of the fortress, removed the roofs, and threw the bodies in indiscriminately. When all the towers were filled with dead bodies, they put the roofs back on. So many people died of the plague that people could only tie the stone carts to the speechless livestock and then throw the bodies on them. When the mules carrying the bodies died of exhaustion, the carts would also overturn. It was so messy everywhere. Even the dry ponds were filled with bodies. The above situation occurred during the reign of Justinian in the Eastern Roman Empire. This large scaled, long lasting plague profoundly changed the historical direction of the Eastern Roman Empire. In fact, not only this plague of Justinian, but in the long history of the decline of the Roman Empire, plagues played an important role. Let's briefly understand the major plagues that changed the historical direction of Roman civilization. In 79 AD, the Vesuvius volcano on the Italian peninsula suddenly erupted. The ancient city of Pompeii was instantly submerged. The Roman economy suffered a major blow. Coincidentally, in 80 AD, Rome, which had not yet recovered from the disaster, had another large scale plague. About 40 years later, in 125 AD, during the reign of Emperor Hadrian, another large scale plague occurred in the city of Rome. At least 1 million people disappeared. These two epidemics occurred during the golden age of the Roman Empire. Although they would cause a certain degree of damage, relying on their strong national strength, the Romans could still continue to sing songs of triumph and move forward. But when the declining empire encountered a major plague, it was like adding a wild catalyst to a lukewarm chemical reaction. In 164 AD, to counter the invasion of the Parthians, Emperor Aurelius sent an Eastern expeditionary army named after Verus to attack Parthia, successfully stayed in the Kasitsan Hotel. But behind the military victory was endless disaster. The returning Roman legions began to have an epidemic, and it broke out completely with their return home. First in Asia Minor, then it spread to Greece, Italy, and even the city of Rome. As the army and merchant ships raged throughout the empire, this plague was named the Antonine Plague after the dynasty. It is estimated that at least 3.5 to 5 million people died in the entire empire. Thousands of Roman nobles died. Some people speculate that Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself also died of this plague. After 180 AD, the plague subsided for a period of time, and then made a comeback around 189 AD. The repeatedly infected Roman people suffered miserably. The Roman Empire once again suffered a heavy blow. Unlike the two plagues about 100 years ago, the Roman Empire at the end of the 2nd century AD was already on a downward path. The era of the good emperors ended at this time. The plague also arrived on time by coincidence, drawing a cruel end to the golden age of the empire. The chaotic situation of the Sever and Dynasty and the 3rd century crisis, the Antonine Plague and the Plague of Commodus played an indelible role in it. In the mid-3rd century, the 3rd century crisis of the Roman Empire gradually reached its climax, and the Great Plague of the natural world arrived on time again. This plague, which occurred in 249 AD during the reign of Emperor Decius, was named the Plague of Cyprian after a bishop who recorded it. According to the Roman historian Dio, 2,000 people died of the plague in the city of Rome in one day, accounting for about 1/4 of the total infected population. The total death toll of the Roman Empire is estimated to be as high as 5 million. In some areas, 1/3 of the population was wiped out. The plague of Cyprian lasted for many years, from 249 AD until the 272nd. The Roman Emperor Claudius I was suspected to have died of this plague. The cities of the Roman Empire, Alexandria, Antioch, Carthage, and the capital Rome, all suffered heavy losses. This was another heavy blow to the Roman Empire, which was already weak in the 3rd century crisis. Together with the contemporary military chaos, political collapse, and economic recession, it constituted the 3rd century crisis. After the end of the 3rd century crisis, the plague was not absent from the Roman history of the 4th century. Around 312 AD, a plague broke out again in the western part of the empire. This epidemic broke out after a famine. A large number of the urban population fled to the countryside. Those who had barely survived the famine fell in the plague. In that year, in the western part of the empire, Constantine was fiercely fighting with Maxentius. Famine, plague, and war brought great destruction to the empire. The history of the late empire was also always full of plagues. For example, in 447 AD, after an earthquake occurred in the Western Roman Empire, a plague followed. The Western Roman Empire, which was already falling apart and its national strength was declining, was completely unable to recover from the multiple disasters and went to its final end. In the 6th century, the Eastern Roman Empire, after decades of accumulation, began to recover its old territory. In 534 AD, Emperor Justinian sent Belisarius on an expedition against the Vandal kingdom. Then he won a battle and recovered Africa. Belisarius then marched into Italy and easily recovered the old capital of the empire, Rome. Just as the Roman Empire was marching towards a great revival, a large scale plague of unprecedented scale struck overwhelmingly. The first wave of the plague was prevalent in the capital Constantinople for 4 months, with the 3rd month being the peak period. During this period, the death toll increased rapidly. The academic community's estimates of the population loss in Constantinople vary from 1-3rd to -5ths to 1-1/2. The average daily death toll was about 5,000. In any case, the plague of Justinian made the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire a real hell on earth where death was rampant for a time. What was even worse was that this epidemic was not just one round. Various parts of the Mediterranean world periodically broke out in epidemics. The Roman people, under repeated infections, were in misery. The severe impact of the Great Plague was not only on one generation, but possibly on several generations. The epidemic broke out repeatedly, and the power of each outbreak did not weaken in the slightest. The epidemic not only caused a large number of deaths, but also suppressed the fertility of the Romans, causing a sharp decline in the population of the Roman Empire. The army it could maintain also dropped sharply from hundreds of thousands to more than 100,000. In the later years of Justinian's reign, although the empire had difficulty recovering Italy and parts of the western Mediterranean, its comprehensive national strength was far inferior to that before the outbreak of the epidemic. What was most fatal was that in the entire late Justinian dynasty, the epidemic continued to recur, with major outbreaks every few years. It was not until the 7th century that it gradually subsided. But what came with the 7th century was not only the dissipation of the plague, but also the iron hose from Persia and the south wind from Arabia. The Eastern Roman Empire declined from a world-class superpower to a regional country. The heavy blow of the plague to the empire exacerbated this process and even reversed the overall direction of history. In the long process of the decline of the Roman Empire, the constantly breaking out plagues became a catalyst for accelerating the decline. The huge destruction of the epidemic on the social economy, military, and politics goes without saying. What is most chilling is the change in the thinking of the people of the empire caused by the epidemic. The most typical of these is Procopius. He had once highly praised Justinian. In several books completed in his early years, he greatly boasted about Justinian, even to the point of being nauseating. Our era has produced the Emperor Justinian. He has led the country in crisis. and his fame has spread far and wide, even more great and glorious. He has incorporated many barbarian countries into the Roman Empire and established many cities. He has established a pure faith and blocked the path of wrong thinking. He has treated those who oppose him with tolerance. Procopius also called Justinian a great legislator and the protector of the great Roman Empire, saying that this emperor had perfected the city walls and fortresses on the remote frontiers. Emperor Justinian is the Lord of our era. I think people should correctly call him the King of Heavenly Tao, or the kind of benevolent father leader that Homer once said. Those wise monarchs in history are just children in front of him. But it was this same writer who, in the secret history secretly written in his later years, cursed Justinian as a stupid donkey, a human-shaped demon, a vampire, a beast, a murderous skin, an idiot, a demon in human skin, a moron, good at deceiving and falsifying, treacherous and worthless, hypocritical and cunning, two-faced, ruthless, perverted psychology, stubborn, unscrupulous and calmly engaged in extremely ugly things, never treating anyone with sincerity. His every word and deed always seems particularly cunning, however. As for his ideological transformation, whether the Great Plague had a decisive impact is an inconclusive question. But the change in the thinking of the people of different countries before and after the Great Plague is fully demonstrated here. It can also provide a historical sample for you and me, who are in confusion. Every major plague will bring about great social changes, whether positive or negative. It will always happen. And those who silently bear it are always the unknown, brave, and resolute working masses in history. I believe everyone knows that today's Rome is the capital of Italy. For more than 100 years, everyone has been accustomed to this situation. Italy also often prides itself as the heir of ancient Roman civilization. But everyone should also know that the city of Rome does not only belong to Italy. There is another country inside the city of Rome. That is the smallest country in the world, Vatican City. Its area is only 0.44 square kilometers, which is only a little larger than the Xiaoyaojin Park in Hefei. But don't look down on it because it's small. The predecessor of the Vatican was very glorious. The Pope of Rome back then was really a man of his word in Europe. He led the Crusades to rampage in the Levant region, forced the Holy Roman Emperor to kneel before the Church, and served as the spiritual leader of the entire Western European world. Let's not mention all these glorious past events for the time being. The Pope, as God's representative on earth and the leader of the Catholic spiritual world, also served as the leader of a secular country. It's really that he took all the benefits from heaven and earth, and you can't be unconvinced. He has something to say. Not to mention that behind the Papal States, there was the strong support of the Frankish Carolingian Empire. From a legal point of view, the existence of the Papal States was recognized by official documents. It was the great Emperor Constantine I who personally gave the city of Rome and its surrounding areas to the Pope. You can't be unconvinced. He has the official documents that have been preserved, commonly known as the donation of Constantine. So the question is, did Constantine himself know about this? In the mid-8th century, the rule of the Eastern Roman Empire on the Apennine Peninsula was precarious. With the fall of Ravenna, the city of Rome was directly exposed to the threat of the Lombards. To protect itself, the Pope of the city of Rome brought in the Franks, who were at the height of their power. With the help of Pepin, the Lombard kingdom was eliminated. The Pope obtained a large piece of land, known in history as the donation of Pepin. But the Pope's nominal leader was the Eastern Roman Emperor far away in Constantinople. He did not agree to you, the Pope of Rome, ruling the city of Rome. What to do? To strengthen his legitimacy, the Pope took out a document. You didn't expect it, did you? The city of Rome was given to us by the great Constantine hundreds of years ago. This document is the called Constitution of Constantine, or the Donation of Constantine. The academic community today has basically recognized that this is a pure forgery. Let's go back to the Donation of Constantine. As a document that suddenly appeared, the most important task was to make everyone believe that the content of the document was true. What does this document say? The document starts from Constantine's own first-person perspective, first expressing his firm Christian faith. Then it describes a serious illness he once had. Constantine stated that he had severe leprosy. Baldwin IV would have called him an expert. Constantine tried various methods, but still could not cure the disease. He had no choice but to start jumping gods. The first to jump out were the pagans, that is, the called polytheists. They gathered many innocent children, wanting to fill the fountain with their blood, so that Constantine could be soaked in this blood and thus cure his leprosy. Specifically targeting children, how could these be polytheists? Only some countries in the Levant region could do such a thing. I'm talking about the atrocities during the Crusades. In short, this proposal was not implemented because Constantine met the two Christian saints, Paul and Peter. They pointed out a clear path to the current Pope, Sylvester. As long as Constantine gave up his polytheistic faith and piously accepted the baptism of Christianity, his leprosy would naturally be cured. Constantine then, pushed and willingly, repented in a room in the Lateran palace, wearing sackcloth. And guess what? Constantine really communicated with God. His illness was really cured, and not only the emperor alone, but all the imperial officials, the entire Senate, all the nobles, and all the Roman people together completely recovered their health. To thank the great God, Constantine decided to give the four main dioceses of Antioch, Alexandria, Constantinople, and Jerusalem to the Pope. At the same time, he recognized the supreme status of Pope Sylvester and even wanted to give his own imperial crown to the Pope. But the Pope, who was indifferent to fame and fortune, did not accept it. Constantine also decided to give the city of Rome, Italy, and even the entire Western Empire to the Pope. He himself would go to the eastern province of Byzantium to build a new capital, Constantinople. The final signature was Constantine's fourth consular term, the consul O Venus Gallicanus. This document seems to have no problem at first glance, but in fact, the problem is huge. First is the cure of leprosy. You know, even with today's advanced medicine, it is very difficult to completely cure leprosy, let alone the ancient medical practice of bloodletting at every turn. If Constantine really had leprosy, how could he have been active on the battlefield all the time? Well, let's assume that leprosy is just a rhetorical device in writing, an excuse Constantine found for his conversion to Christianity. Then did he hand over the Western Empire to the Pope to rule? This is also complete nonsense. Viewers who have watched the Constantine Dynasty series before should know that Constantine himself was a person with a very strong desire for power. His eldest son, Crispus, was talented and had outstanding achievements. What was his final end? He was not killed by Constantine himself. Constantine could not even tolerate his own biological son. So how could he give half of the Roman Empire to a pope who was 1,000 miles away? At this time, some people might say that Constantine was a pious Christian, and it was understandable for him to do such a fanatical thing. This is also nonsense. If Constantine was a pious believer, why did he only accept the baptism of Christianity before he died? Moreover, regarding the religious aspect, this document has another bug. The whole article is expounding the triniparation theory of the Nicene Orthodox faction. This was naturally politically correct in the Middle Ages, but in Constantine's era, whether the three were one was a big question. Constantine later had close contact with the Arian faction, which had a 3- person, 3- substance ideology. Would such a person really spend a large amount of space in a decree to expound the idea of the Trinity? Well, even if Constantine was really a fanatic, the matter of him giving the Western Empire to the Pope itself simply does not make sense. Not to mention that in history, there is no record of the Pope managing the city of Rome. Later, after Constantine's death, he divided the empire among his 3 sons. Among them, the eldest son Constantine I and the youngest son Constans I each obtained a part of the Western Empire. As mentioned before, he gave the West to the Pope, so how could he give it to his own sons again? At this time, the Pope did not speak again, and did not know how to use the content of the code to defend his right. What's going on? In addition, this document has another big bug. That is, the time simply does not match. The signature at the end of the document is Constantine's 4th consular term and the consul Ovinus Gallicanus. Constantine's 4th term was in 315 AD, while Ovinus Gallicanus was the consul in 317 AD. How could these 2 names appear at the same time? Even if there was really a negligence in time, whether it was 315 or 317. The Byzantine region where Constantinople was located was still in the hands of the Eastern Emperor Lysianith. What Constantine controlled at this time was the western part of the empire. At this time, you give the West to the Pope in one go. Is Constantine not planning to live anymore? And the official name of the new capital established by Constantine was not Constantinople, but Second Rome or New Rome. How could he mention the word Constantinople in an official legal document? The document of the donation of Constantine is full of errors. In common parlance, it is a complete fake, but it could not withstand the authority of the medieval pope, whose word was law. The common people had little knowledge, and they believed whatever the pope said. This lie thus continued for hundreds of years. Pope Leo IX even, in 1054, in a letter to the Patriarch of Constantinople, Michaelicii Arularius, quoted a large part of the content of this document. This was a direct slap in the face. It angered the Constantinople side to death and further promoted the great schism of the Eastern and Western churches. In the 11th and 12th centuries, the donation was oft unsighted in the investiture conflict between the Pope and secular power in the West. Whenever a secular ruler was disobedient, the Pope would take out this document to suppress him, causing great public indignation. Many lower-level Christian priests also discovered this problem. For example, Lorenzo Valla and others began to refute the authenticity of this document. Along with it, many documents in the Idorian Dec Rate Alls were also proven to be forgeries. This collection of Dec Rate Alls was simply called the Pseudo-Is Idorian Dec Rate Alls by later generations. Did Constantine do anything similar to donating land? Yes, he did. Constantine should have given the Lateran palace to the Pope. Good heavens, he only gave a palace, and it was directly blown up by the Pope into half an empire. The Roman Curia was really daring to say. The Roman Catholic Church's prestige was greatly damaged after being proven to be a forgery. In addition, with the combination of the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment, the Papal States declined day by day. In the end, only the Vatican City of today, with an area of only 0.44 square kilometers, was left. What Constantine gave to the Pope back then was only a Lateran palace. Today's Papal States also only have a Vatican castle left. This can be considered historical karma. Let's start the video by asking everyone a question. What do you think best represents ancient Roman civilization? Is it the famous Roman legions, the Roman Senate in world-famous paintings, famous Roman figures such as Caesar and Augustus, or the abstract and erotic stories of Caligula and Nero? There are many choices. But if you ask which building best represents ancient Rome, then there will probably be no controversy: the Roman Colosseum. After all, who doesn't love the wonder of civilization? In a Christian book, there is such a sentence: as long as the Colosseum stands, Rome shall stand. When the Colosseum falls, Rome shall fall. When Rome falls, the whole world will collapse. Today, the Roman Colosseum still stands quietly in the capital of Italy, Rome, telling tourists the vicissitudes of 1,000 years of history. The ruins of this amphitheater are the most famous, most typical, and largest scale Colosseum in Roman history, also known as the Flavian Amphitheater. This is also the culmination of Roman architectural experience. But just as Rome was not built in a day, the Roman Colosseum could not have appeared out of thin air. This required a considerable period of accumulation. In this video, we will take a look at the construction history of the Roman Colosseum and what the Roman gladiators usually performed. In Roman history, there were dueling performances first, and then there were special performance venues. There may have been 3 initial venues for dueling performances. First, in private residences for VIP performance services. Second, on a flat ground a few steps away from the tomb, a wooden fence was erected, and the gladiators performed inside the fence. The gladiators who unfortunately died could be buried on the spot. The third venue was the Roman Forum. The organizer would temporarily set up shelves and platforms there. The gladiators performed on the stage, and the audience stood around to watch them fight, cheering from time to time. After the performance, the organizer would dismantle the shelves and platforms again. This repeated construction and dismantling was really tiring for the organizer's staff. At this time, if there could be some white elephant mixed noodles, it would be really suitable. It just so happens that Pinduoduo's snack welfare season is now specially subsidizing domestic delicacies. You can get a whole box of white elephant mixed noodles for only yuan. There are all kinds of flavors. The noodles are chewy and the soup is rich. It is very suitable for stocking up at home or in the dormitory. The price is usually not cheap, but now you can get a whole box for yuan. I have won a batch of fan benefits for everyone, with priority to grab the quota. Click the link below the video or the pinned link in the comments section. From the link on my side, you will have an exclusive preferential price. I have also prepared a direct discount coupon for everyone. In addition to white elephant instant noodles, there are also whole boxes of Hade Ilao snail noodles. Snail noodles, hot and sour noodles, all for only yuan. However, even with white elephant mixed noodles to supplement energy, a mobile performance venue was still not as cost-effective as a stable venue. In 53 BC, Curio authorized the construction of 2 wooden theaters, shaped like the semicircular buildings of Greece. I want to rise step by step on a central point. In the morning, the theater would provide 2 different performances at the same time, and the 2 partitions were enough to separate the 2 performance stages. In the afternoon, after the partitions were removed, the Roman Colosseum, or the Roman Colosseum, was born. In the late 1st century BC, various cities in Italy began to build permanent amphitheaters. However, many amphitheaters were still temporary and wooden. Wooden amphitheaters were very unsafe and prone to accidents. The most serious accident even caused the death of 12 people on the spot. Such casualties were unimaginable in the classical era. To avoid such accidents from happening again, and also for the accumulation of architectural experience, the world wonder we see today, the Roman Colosseum, was born. The Colosseum is located in the center of the city of Rome, near the conveniently located ancient Roman Forum. The foundation of the Colosseum was originally a small lake in the Golden House of Emperor Nero. In 72 AD, the construction of the Colosseum was started by Emperor Vespasian and completed by Emperor Titus in 80 AD. The process took 8 years. It is said that after Emperor Titus destroyed Jerusalem, he used 40,000 of the 100,000 captives as slaves to build this building. Later, Emperor Domitian expanded the Colosseum, adding a basement for keeping wild animals. Because the two emperors who built the amphitheater and the emperor who later completed the last floor of the amphitheater all belonged to the Flavian family, it was called the Flavian Amphitheater. The amphitheater was completed, so what kind of programs would the gladiators in it perform? First was the struggle between man and man. Large scale competitions often had hundreds of gladiators on stage, and smaller scale gladiator competitions also had about 30 gladiators. The gladiators, in full view of the public, fought with their opponents with real swords and guns. The gladiators had to wear various protective gear and decorative items, mainly to prevent the gladiators from dying too quickly and there being no show to watch. The gladiators' armor would be gilded or decorated with gold thread or precious stones. In addition to precious metals, the armor might also be decorated with peacock or ostrich feathers. However, to make the performance more exciting, most of the gladiator's body had to be exposed. The back and chest were often exposed, so that the opponent could easily stab and bleed, thereby stimulating the senses, and also to let the audience clearly see the bleeding and take pleasure in it. When the blood began to flow, the Romans would become more excited, even King Fen excited, stimulated. The cheers in the crowd would rise one after another, and the applause would be continuous. When a defeated gladiator lay on his back on the ground, he could raise his left hand to ask the organizer and the audience for mercy. If his fighting performance was very outstanding, then the audience wanted him to live. They would raise their thumbs and shout, "Let him go." Then the organizer would decide whether to really let him go. But if you let the audience decide that this gladiator's performance was very poor, then he was doomed. People would point their thumbs down and shout, "Kill him." The winning gladiator would then finish off the loser with one blow, and those winning gladiators would be rewarded with the prize of victory, such as money and a palm branch symbolizing victory. They would wear a laurel wreath on their heads, wave a palm branch in their hands, and circle the amphitheater with great honor. The highest reward for a winning gladiator was a wooden sword. It symbolized that the gladiator had won his freedom. There was once a gladiator named Flammy, who had a very glorious gladiator career. He participated in 30 for fights in his life, of which he won 20-1, drew 9, and lost 4, and in these 4 defeats he was pardoned. He can be called the king of survival among the Roman gladiators. Besides the duels of the gladiators, beast fights and man-beast duels were also an important part of the performance. Pompey held a beast fight performance in 55 BC, killing a total of 20 elephants, 600 lions, 410 leopards, and some monkeys. Pompey's father Law and old rival, Caesar, held a beast fight performance in 46 BC. The beasts used were elephants, 400 lions, and a giraffe. Augustus claimed that in the various beast fight performances he held, a total of 3,500 beasts were killed. Caligula killed 400 bears in one beast fight performance. Nero killed 400 bears and 300 lions in one beast fight performance. Titus, at the inauguration ceremony of the Colosseum, killed a full 9,000 beasts, and the most terrible number came from the Bathshona. In the beast fight performance held by Trajan, the number of beasts killed was as high as more than 11,000. Whether it was a herd of beasts fighting or a man-beast duel, the final scene was extremely bloody. At the inauguration ceremony of the Roman Colosseum in 80 AD, a beast fighter drove a rhinoceros to fight with a bull, a bear, a water buffalo, a wild bull, a lion, and a castrated bull. The gladiators also suffered heavy casualties in this. After the performance, the strong smell of blood and death permeated the underground passages and lingered for a long time. Everywhere there were the bodies of criminals and animals. Everywhere there were scattered animal claws and teeth, very terrifying. Everything was soaked in a pool of blood. The rotting bodies gave off a pungent smell. But perhaps in a few days, or even the next day, there would be a performance. Everything had to be cleaned up immediately. It seems that the cleaners of the Roman Colosseum also needed strong psychological quality. For the audience of the Colosseum, the most bizarre performance was the execution of death row inmates. The criminals were tied to stakes or crosses and burned to death, or they were left alone in the arena to fight with one or more starved wild beasts. Watching this kind of performance also required strong psychological quality. Many upper-class gentlemen and ladies would often leave the arena on the pretext of having lunch to avoid watching this cruel performance. Emperor Claudius, he was criticized for being addicted to watching executions. He often went to the amphitheater early in the morning. At noon, when people dispersed to have lunch, he was still sitting there watching. In the era of Nero, the scene of executions was also adapted into a script, and the death row inmates were made to play the roles that would die in one execution performance. A fat man named Lord Oellus was not only tortured to the extreme, but also thrown in front of a bear. The poet Martial vividly described such a scene like Prometheus, bound to the Scythian cliff, pecked by a vulture. Lord Oellus hung on a cross. His entrails were offered to a Caledonian bear. He was bloody and mangled, but still alive. The most shocking program in the Roman Colosseum should be the naval battle performance. The first grand naval battle performance was held by Caesar in a basin specially dug in the suburbs of the city. Augustus, to celebrate the inauguration of the Temple of Mars Ultor, had 3,000 warriors enact the Battle of Salamis on an artificial lake 1,800 feet long and 1,200 feet wide. Claudius, at the inauguration of the Flavian Amphitheater, once filled the entire amphitheater with water and staged a scene of the battle of the Corinthians against the Corcyraeans from the Peloponnesian War. In these battles, the fighters were not prisoners of war from the past, but convicted criminals. They killed each other until one side was completely slaughtered. The winners could often gain their freedom. To be able to fill the land with water and stage an naval battle, the architectural level of the Roman Colosseum is worthy of admiration. The ability of the Colosseum's cleaning staff is even more worthy of admiration. The gladiator performances of the Roman Colosseum were an entertainment activity that the Roman society from top to bottom was addicted to, and the Roman emperors were no exception. The protagonist in the movie Gladiator, Commodus, was a representative of them. The classical historian Herodian described that once he shot Moroccan ostriches with a crossbow with a crescent-shaped arrow, cutting off their heads from the top of the neck. After the ostriches' heads were cut off by the sword's edge, the ostriches still continued to run around as if they were not injured at all. Another time, when a leopard rushed over like lightning, grabbed a death row inmate, and was about to bite, he killed it with a javelin against the beast's sharp teeth, saving the man. Another time, when 100 lions suddenly appeared, he killed all 100 lions with 100 javelins. All the bodies extended in a straight line, so their number was not difficult to calculate, and no one saw any extra javelins. Commodus also boasted of being the conqueror of 1,000 gladiators, boasting that he had defeated 12,000 opponents and fought 735 fights without a scratch. It can be said that he boasted without drafting. However, in the era of Commodus, gladiator performances had gradually declined, as the golden age of the good emperors transformed into an age of iron and rust. The frequency of gladiator performances in the Roman state decreased day by day. The ensuing 3rd century crisis also profoundly impacted Roman society. As the Roman Empire transitioned to its late period, Christianity gradually became the most influential religion in the empire. Christians opposed the bloody and cruel dueling performances. As the Roman rulers and Roman citizens gradually converted to Christianity, dueling performances were finally abolished. The Colosseum has since fallen silent. In the subsequent wars in the city of Rome, it was destroyed time and time again. Fortunately, its outline has been preserved. Today, we can still admire its majesty and, through the clouds of history, look back at the wonderful and cruel gladiator performances that once took place in it. In ancient Rome, how difficult was it to raise a child? Needless to say, the productivity of the classical era was low. The meager food sources, the backward medical conditions, earthquakes, plagues, natural disasters, wars, riots, and many troubles. These events all had a serious negative impact on the raising of newborns. Marcus Aurelius and Faustina, the younger, were famous loving couples in Roman history. They gave birth to more than a dozen children and set an example by raising their children themselves. However, only 6 of their children survived to adulthood. The mortality rate was over 50%. If the emperor's children were like this, it also reflects from the side how difficult it was to raise newborns in ancient times. And from a specific phenomenon, the difficulty of the Romans in raising newborns was mainly reflected in the act of abandoning infants. Due to the excessive pressure of life caused by raising children, many overwhelmed parents chose to abandon their children. This also caused a serious population crisis in Rome. In the late Roman Republic, the citizen population in the Italian region showed a relatively obvious downward trend. In 46 BC, Caesar conducted a census in Rome and found that the number of Roman citizens had decreased from the original 320,000 to 150,000. During the reign of Augustus, he organized 3 censuses. According to Augustus's autobiography, the result of the census in 28 BC was 4,063,000 people. The population at this time was 500,000, less than about 2 centuries ago, and the decline in population was closely related to the phenomenon of abandoning infants. The origin of Roman history is actually a story of an abandoned infant. The Vestal Virgin Rhea Silvia became pregnant out of wedlock and gave birth to twin brothers, Romulus and Remus. The cruel king ordered the Vestal Virgin to be thrown into prison and the 2 boys to be thrown into the Tiber River. These 2 abandoned infants were found by a she-minus wolf and raised. Later, they founded the city of Rome. The first king of Rome, Romulus, was himself born as an abandoned infant. He issued a decree stipulating that as long as it was confirmed and approved by 5 near neighbors, parents could abandon their newborns. Although the record of Romulus has a legendary color, it also provided a theoretical basis for the act of abandoning infants in Roman society. Quintilian also listed some cases of abandonment. For example, a man found the son he had once abandoned and asked him to marry a wealthy neighbor, but the son wanted to marry the daughter of the poor adoptive father. A disinherited son asked his father to recall another abandoned son. According to Suetonius, after the death of Caligula's father, Germanicus, some people, to express their grief, even abandoned their own newborns. Even during the Antonine dynasty, known as the Golden Age, during the reign of the good emperors, the phenomenon of abandoning infants was repeatedly prohibited but never stopped. In the correspondence between Pliny the Younger and Trajan, this phenomenon was mentioned. Regarding the status and maintenance fees of abandoned infants in the province of Bithynia, Trajan replied as follows: "The question you raised about free people who were abandoned at birth but later raised as slaves by those who saved them has often been discussed. But I cannot find any universal answer in the records of my predecessors. My opinion is that those who, for this reason, demand the restoration of their freedom, should not be prevented from publicly declaring their right to freedom, nor should they be forced to repay their maintenance fees with their free bodies. In ancient Roman society, there were many reasons for parents to abandon their newborns, including newborn deformities, complex inheritance issues, religious reasons, and gender preference. These problems could be improved through certain moral construction and guidance. Rome once issued a series of decrees to improve this situation. According to the Augustan era writer Dionysius, the Romans should raise all healthy male infants and the first born female infant. Unless the infant was born disabled or deformed, they could not be killed before the age of 3. Although it seems to have placed some restrictions on abandonment, the father's right to abandon newborns was not prohibited. For a long time, Roman law did not deal with the question of whether parents had the right to abandon infants, but with the question of whether the child was still a legal heir after the act of abandonment occurred. Roman law would recognize the inheritance rights of an abandoned child whose identity was proven. In one case, a man divorced his wife when she was pregnant. The wife abandoned the child after giving birth. Someone saved the child. His biological parents did not know he was still alive. After the biological father's death, the will neither deprived him of his inheritance rights nor designated him as an heir. In the end, this abandoned child was recognized by his mother and grandmother, and thus inherited his father's estate. In 313 AD, Constantine I even recognized the legality of parents selling their children and included the situations of abandonment and adoption within the scope of the decree. If parents or masters wanted to take back an abandoned child or slave from the adopter, they had to repay the adopter's expenses. In his later years, Constantine, faced with the trend of abandoning infants, also stipulated that once a child was abandoned, they would not retain their origin, nor would they retain any legal relationship with their biological parents. Although this cut off the opportunity for abandoned infants to inherit their parents' property, it also, to a certain extent, warned parents and reduced the probability of abandoning children. The decree prohibiting the abandonment of newborns was not established until the late Roman Empire, during the reign of Valentinian I. In 374 AD, Valentinian issued a decree that everyone should raise their own offspring. If he thought he should abandon it, he would be punished. This punishment could mean the loss of paternal rights. As soon as this decree was issued, it can be said that from a legal level, it completely ended the parents' right to abandon newborns. The imperial government broke the law passed down from generation to generation and tried to eradicate the phenomenon of abandoning children from the root. Valentinian's good governance did not stop there. Ancient Rome was very tolerant of infanticide. The 12 Tables explicitly stipulated that a father could kill a deformed child, and it was not until Valentinian that such behavior was finally included in the criminal law. Valentinian stipulated that those who killed infants would be sentenced to death. Having said so much, the most fundamental reason for abandoning infants was still economic problems. The productivity of ancient times was low. Roman parents did not have enough financial ability to raise newborns, so they could only choose to abandon them. In response to such a difficult situation, the Roman Empire issued a series of subsidy policies for poor children. In this video, we will learn about what the child welfare in Rome was like. The PR subsidy program of the Roman Empire was formally proposed during the reign of the Bathyshoner Trajan. However, its prototype had already appeared in the Augustan era. Augustus had generously distributed money from his personal finances to the common people. As a ruler, he stipulated that families with children could receive financial assistance from the state. When he toured various places, he would give each child 1,000 sesterces as maintenance fees to the common people who could prove the legal identity of their children and apply for it, thereby encouraging families to raise newborns and boosting the population situation of the Roman state. The first of the good emperors, Nerva, may have already launched a subsidy program, distributing land worth 60 million sesterces to the common people to help the poorest class raise their children. The second emperor wrote in his edict, "Every citizen can rest assured that even without anyone reminding me, I have already given up my private ease for public safety, the distribution of new benefits, so as not to repeat the mistakes of the previous emperor. The memories of those who provide assistance and the shyness of those who receive assistance will cause public doubt. I think it is necessary to eliminate this doubt. I will not be an indulgent person." And by the time of Trajan, this emperor was not only meritorious in military aspects, conquering Dacia in the north and Parthia in the east, but he also formally launched the alimente subsidy program. This program was roughly a low-minus interest loan policy. Trajan connected the relief program with the policy of revitalizing agriculture. Farmers received low-minus interest loans from the government for agricultural production, and the interest on the loans was used as a source of funds for subsidizing poor children. It was included in the child care fund established by the government. The low-minus interest loan policy was initially to lend to large landowners for production. The government thus obtained mortgage funds, and the large landowners obtained profits other than paying interest. Trajan set different relief amounts for beneficiaries of different ages. Boys under 16 received 16 sesterces a month, and girls under 14 received 12 sesterces a month. Illegitimate children would receive less assistance, with boys receiving 12 sesterces a month and girls 10 sesterces a month. However, this assistance was not without a price. Trajan also created a decree that all subsidized children must be registered in order to enjoy the state's donation. Pliny the Younger also clearly pointed out that the subsidized boys needed to join the army after they grew up, and the subsidized girls were required to marry and have children. Trajan's policy, on the one hand, was to enhance the national strength of the Roman Empire, but it also indeed helped some children living in hardship and their parents. Pliny the Younger praised Trajan, saying that through his nurturing talent, he had become the father of the public. Trajan's successor, Hadrian, inherited his uncle's policy. This emperor Hadrian was famous for his identity as a special forces soldier who traveled through various provinces for many years. He also promoted the alimente subsidy policy to the entire empire, implementing a wider range of subsidy and charity programs throughout the empire. He also raised the maximum age of subsidized children to 18 for boys and 14 for girls. This meant that the time and scope of subsidies for poor children were extended. Hadrian also opened up subsidies for children born of mixed-minus status marriages. The two emperors Antoninus Pius and Marcus Aurelius also inherited this practice. To commemorate his deceased wife, Faustina, Emperor Antoninus Pius established a foundation to support girls in his wife's name and named this policy the Faustina Program, meaning the beneficiary children of the Faustina Decree. In the currency issued during the reign of Antoninus Pius, there are also scenes of parents and their daughters receiving subsidies. Marcus Aurelius was a famous philosopher minus emperor. He also very much agreed with the alimente subsidy policy implemented by the previous emperor. After his wife, Faustina the Younger, died, to commemorate his wife, he further expanded the quota of children on the public grain distribution list. In the 3rd century, the Roman Empire suffered from natural and man-made disasters, and the alimente subsidy policy was difficult to sustain. However, after Constantine came to power, it was once restored. Because of the increasingly serious trend of abandoning infants, Constantine decided to follow the alimente subsidy policy of his predecessors. Into legislations in 322 and 329 AD, he authorized the use of the income of the state treasury to provide clothing and food for poor families. The charitable example set by the Roman emperor set off a wave of following suit in Italy, and even in various provinces. The most typical case is Pliny the Younger's subsidy to children in Como. He subsidized 500,000 sesterces for the commoner children of the entire city. In the province of Africa, in the Sika region, an inscription details the subsidy fund established by a local rich man between 168 and 180 AD to the residents and citizens of Sirte. I, Publius Licinius Papirianus, wish to donate 1,300,000 sesterces. Dear fellow citizens, I believe in your goodwill. The 5% interest on this money may be able to support 300 boys and 300 girls a year. Boys from 3 to 15 years old can receive 2.5 denarii a month. Girls from 3 to 13 years old can receive 2 denarii a month. As long as the residents live within the border towns of the colony, they should also be included. If you can accept these arrangements, then it is best to have 2 of the highest minus ranking public officials of the towns elect the social children every year. It must be noted that if a child reaches adulthood or dies, a replacement should be immediately found. Only in this way can it be ensured that there are always enough children being supported. Establishing a special fund to help poor children was a wise way to not only win public respect, but also effectively alleviate social population problems and the weakness of agricultural development. While maintaining the stability of Roman society, it produced many positive benefits. However, the scope of influence of the ancient Roman alimente subsidy program was basically limited to the capital, Rome. Those remote provincial areas could hardly receive the grace.